Hi, Juno News. Welcome back to another episode of Not Sorry. I'm your host, Alexander Brown. I'm the director of the National Citizens Coalition. I'm a writer, a campaigner, a communicator. Love doing these episodes with you now 3 days a week. And while you're here, take advantage of our promo code, junonews.com/not sorry for 20% off. And one of the things we like to talk about here at the show, arguably ad nauseum, is Doug Ford, Ontario's premier. We we know him. We have issues with him. You love him unless they're potentially one of his lobbyists. He's in the past called my work through a group at Project Ontario and others like me. He called us radical rights and yahoos. Have you seen this clip?
On this Project Ontario group, they're having a meeting tomorrow night. They're pushing for smaller government. They say you don't have the will to kind of do what it takes to really cut down. They're also looking for more private healthcare option, different options for independent schools. You've always said you're open to ideas from various political parties. Are you open to any of their ideas?
I don't even know who these guys are. They sound like a bunch of radical rights. Folks, I'm not in favor of the radical left and the radical right. This government of Ontario or in Canada, we're prudent fiscal managers, first of all. I'm tough on crime. I'm a prudent fiscal manager. I don't know who these yahoos are. It sounds like some radical right group, probably tied to maybe a federal party or something. I don't have a clue.
Like the federal conservative?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, who knows who they're tied to. And I really don't care, to be honest with you. I don't even know who these guys are. I'm going to focus on our agenda, protecting the people, protecting the economy, creating more jobs, building infrastructure, building the healthcare system. That's what I'm focused on.
So there are, of course, so many things to unpack there. It's been covered so well in Juno News, I believe, by Clayton Domain. But the implications there are that conservative criticism of Ford, because Project Ontario, Matt Spoke, the co-founder, has joined this show before to talk about it. It is a collection of the leading conservative third parties, of media influencers, of top campaigners, of concerned politicians. We didn't all decide to get together to suddenly be liberal. The fact that he even called something radical right in Yahoo and then implied that it had ties to the federal party is sort of like he's implying that the federal party to him, who are conservative, are also radical rights and yahoos, which probably tells you just how far left he's drifted. I spoke on stage at the Project Ontario conference in September at the Gardner Museum, just steps down the street from Queen's Park, and I was looking out at hundreds of people, concerned parents, the hardworking folk, young people who can't find jobs and I feel like they have to move away. And I didn't see yahoos and radical rights. I saw conservatives who were going home to the need for bollards in their driveways and security guards and kids who couldn't find work and who were worried about crime and chaos and abdication on housing starts and affordability and that cozy relationship with the federal liberals that one could certainly argue. And for him to make this principled argument to try to besmirch those with reasonable criticism is perhaps ironic, considering this is a group who, let's say, when he's not pulling liquor off the shelves or talking tough while handing out a record amount of subsidies, now more than Quebec, which is pretty astonishing, they're in a little bit of hot water. They're clients of lobbying firms with close connections to Premier Doug Ford, who have been hugely successful in applying to the province's Skills Development Fund, a grant program that Ontario's Auditor General themselves recently characterized as not fair, transparent, or accountable. This has been impactful reporting from Trillium. Clients of a single firm have received more than 100 million from the Skills Development Fund, according to this Trillium analysis of government spending logs and lobbying records. That firm is owned by the Premier's campaign manager. So if we want to talk principles, if we want to talk yahoos, I'm sorry, but there's a little bit of accountability that's missing there, and it sure seems like there are conservative principles that are missing there. I hope they find their way. I really do, because we're talking to Bobbi and Brady. She is an incredible story, an independent MPP. That's her party. Those are her people. She was cast aside, and she's won twice anyway. Thrilled to have her on the show. She has proven Ford and his inner circle wrong, and join us for this chat. Joining us now on the show is Bobbi Brady. Bobbi is a Haldimand-Norfolk independent MPP, a second-term member of provincial parliament who has proven Premier Doug Ford and is inner circle wrong in a pretty tremendous way. And I'm excited to share her story. Bobbi, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Happy you have your local your fair and your riding this week, don't you?
One of Ontario's oldest county fairs, the Norfolk County Fair and Horse Show. It operates 7 days straight, all day long, all night long. So this tired face is all. I'm almost fared out, but it's one of the best weeks in our area's year, and one of the things that we always look forward to.
That's terrific. I think of like a great county fair, I think of food. What's the item for you? What have you perhaps like overindulged in? What's the
Well,
oddity?
I don't overindulge in fair food. I'm one of
Okay.
those people who, eats before she goes to the fair because I don't want to be tempted. But if I had to pick one thing, maybe it'd be the elephant ear.
Oh wow, now what would that be?
So it's just a big piece of pastry, and you can put like icing sugar on it. It's like a beaver tail.
Oh, terrific. Okay, yeah, it's like never grocery shop when you're hungry. It's like the same rule, right? And
Yeah,
so
and one of the other, look, we have some pretty cool food vendors locally here. One of which I love is called Fork and Pierogies,
fork
and
and
so
pierogies.
it's all different, like pork on pierogies or all different toppings on some pierogies. It's one of the best places to grab a bite to eat, and they're
Love
at
it.
a lot of
We
our local festivals.
Good to hear. We love our local businesses. We love our
Mhm.
local festivals. The locals love you. You have
We're
been a popular two-term MPP, and it almost didn't come about because you have this really interesting story where, let's just say, the Ford PCs meddled in the riding and meddled in what the constituents expected of the electoral process to come. Tell us a little bit about what the heck happened there.
Yeah, so we're backing up to 2022, and in 2022, 2023, I told this story so many times that it was I could do it in my sleep, but I'm a bit out of practice. So if we rewind to 2022, um, I was the Haldimand-Norfolk PC Riding Association president, and I had been for over 20 years. That's constitutionally wrong, but nobody wanted to be the president. Toby Barrett had been the member for the PCs for 27 years here. People were very complacent that Bobbi will do the work on the association, and everything will be hunky dory, and Toby will continue to get reelected. So we had a hard time attracting new members, but I was the president for over 20 years, and if we go back to January 2022, I said to the party, look, you know what? We all know Toby, after the 2018 election, had gone to the premier's office and he had said, look, this is my last run. I want to keep it private, but I'm letting you guys know that we need a succession plan. And I want you to know that I've been grooming my EA for a number of years. So that's that. So we left it there. January 2022, I go to the party and I said, look, we need to start planning for a nomination night. Well, Bobbi, COVID has just reared its ugly head once again. We can't do nominations, which was really interesting to me because at the time I lived with third in command at the Ontario PC party, and he was going out the door and running nominations elsewhere in this province where COVID was more prevalent than Haldimand-Norfolk. And so that didn't make sense to me. So February comes along, I ask again. Nope, nope, nope. March comes along. Nope, nope, nope. And April 9th, I remember the day well because my mom's birthday is in April. And on April 9th, I cooked all day long for her birthday. It's a real feat for me. And so we were just sitting down to dinner, and Toby called me and he says, I've got some bad news. The premier is going to appoint Mayor Ken Hewitt as the PC candidate. And I said, Toby, I don't have time for games right now. Like I've been cooking all day. He goes, no, this is the truth. And that was like a kick to the gut. Number one, Mr. Hewitt was not seen as a conservative. I knew that because I ran the PC Association for 20 years. He had run as a federal liberal prior to that. So I said, eventually I said to Toby, over my dead body, are we going to allow this to happen? No personal offense to Mr. Hewitt, but the process is terrible. And the party will say, my detractors, anybody who still exists with the Haldimand-Norfolk PC Association today, which they're all new members. I don't think there's one that is on that board that was there when I was the president. They will say, oh, well, Bobbi, and if you were appointed, no, I never wanted to be appointed.
Yeah.
I wanted a fair, open, honest, transparent nomination. And so we kept going back after the premier had told this to Toby, we kept going back and saying, like, run your guy. If you think he's your champion, run him against me, right? I'll take him on in a nomination. And the proof became when they decided they were not going to run the nomination because they knew I'd clean the floor with the guy. I went to Toby one day and Toby was like, I don't know what to do anymore. And I said, well, I know what to do. He's like, what's that? I said, I'm going to challenge their guy on the ballot as an independent. And that'll be my nomination. And Toby said, you're bleeping crazy, but if you're willing to do it, then let's do it. So I did. And I was told by the party I would be a political embarrassment. I would get less than 5% of the vote. I would commit political suicide. And I said, that's fine. Like, what do I have to lose? Right. So I become a political embarrassment. I commit political suicide. That means God has another plan for me and I'll go find employment somewhere else. But I'm not going to allow the people of Haldimand-Norfolk to be dealt a crappy hand. Yeah. I have worked with these people for over 23 and a half years at that point. I had worked for Toby for 23 and a half years. I said, I love my community. I love the people, and they don't deserve to be disrespected. And the rest is history.
Rest is history. And then I believe it was in February, your share of the vote was like 63.7% or something, like really remarkable. Like I'm not sure the audience realizes like just how rare that is, how difficult that is to pull off now in provincial or federal politics. Like pretty astonishing stuff. And that was in spite of the fact that, Ford at Queen's Park, once said to you, you're not going to have a job next election.
Yeah, he got mad at me one day when I asked him if he would follow in the footsteps of Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe and stop collecting carbon tax on home heating. And I had worked out three answers for him. I was like, he's going to go one of three ways, and he didn't go any of the ways. He just took the opportunity to tell me that he was going to make sure that I was going to be out of a job. He took it very personally, and I'll never forget that day. Actually, it was fantastic. Because everybody's leaving the house and they're like, oh my gosh, Bobbi, and we're so sorry. Like, that was so inappropriate. You couldn't wipe the smile off my face. And people were like, why do you find this funny? And I said, that guy just got me 5,000 votes. I said, yeah. I will play that clip. I will loop that. And I will play that from now until Election Day, because the people of Haldimand-Norfolk obviously are very different. This is a traditionally conservative riding who has now made history twice. They've made history by choosing an independent. And I said, him telling me I would be out of a job, that is going to make the people of Haldimand-Norfolk dig their heels in more, saying, who's this guy from Toronto telling us, our girl's going to be out of a job? We'll pick her. We're the only ones who can make her unemployed.
And I know that name calling pretty well recently. We met at the Project Ontario event at the end of September at the Gardner Museum. We were thrilled to have you on stage. Yeah. This is a collection of not radical rights. Like you've been such a terrific conservative independent MPP. I was looking across at folks from the major leading third parties, like top industry advocates, like luminaries in the field, people I really look up to, like concerned parents, esteemed and distinguished campaigners. And because we put this little thing together, because we've all been kind of, in essence, serving in opposition the way you have, because a conservative government doesn't seem to be acting all that conservative, instead of interfacing with that, instead of listening to us, instead of, I don't know, maybe trying to right the ship on some of those principles, we get called names. It's this, at yahoos and radical rights. You've gotten, threats to your job.
Yeah, which is funny. I posted it on my social media. I said, this is funny. The premier says, I don't know who these yahoos are, but I know they're far right. Well, if you don't know who they are, then how do you know that we're far right? And you're exactly bang on when you say, like, there was a cross
Yeah.
section of people there that night, and it's just because we're disenfranchised. It's not because we're left, right, whatever. We're more in the middle of people who just want common sense returned to Ontario instead of, a premier who is making policy decisions based on the poll that morning.
Yeah, and it's like there's so many conversations you can have about the role of the consultancy there, and evidently what's being fed to him because he knows, like he knows who we are, and he
Mhm.
knows, he had those insults all lined up to try to sort of smother this in the crib, and like it was the Streisand effect. It just brought more attention to the project, which is great, and then we had a wonderful sold out event with all kinds of wonderful small C people. But
Well,
it
I'm pretty sure he knew I was going that night. I'm sure like, I loved what Greg Brady said
yeah,
when he kicked off the night, and he said, "The premier is so preoccupied by who is in this room tonight." And
yeah.
I just chuckled because I'm like, he's bang on. But I'm pretty sure he knew I was going to be there because that morning, there was a real stunt. I think a stunt pulled on me. So one of the things that the premier always says when we rise from the house for the summer for an extended period of time, he's like, and you'll be sure that if I'm coming through your riding or any of my cabinet ministers are coming through your riding, you guys will be the first to know and you'll be invited. Hmm. Tuesday morning, I'm tip tapping out my notes for Tuesday night downtown Toronto, and all of a sudden my phone starts buzzing. Where are you? Where are you? All these county councilors from Haldimand, and I'm like, "What do you mean? Where am I? I'm at home working on a project for tonight." And they're like, "The premier's at a Truth and Reconciliation march in Hagersville, like in my riding." So every day, the premier and the cabinet minister's calendar comes out through Queens Park briefing, and Monday it said that he was going to be in Hamilton with Andrew Horvath, and that happened. Tuesday, his calendar was blank.
Yeah.
He really didn't want Bobbi and Brady to find out. So then, one of his guys, former candidate who ran against me in 2022, is the first one to post on social media. Wow, you wouldn't believe who was missing from the Truth and Reconciliation March today.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
unbelievable.
I it strikes me as just so peculiar because I think we all want to be big tent people. Like as a third party guy, I'm the director of the National Citizens Coalition. I lucky to work here with Juno on a few projects. Is maybe it's like a holier than thou thing because I'm like not inside of it, but it's like I generally view conservatism and common sense minded policy advocacy as like we're all part of a big tent trying to give that social license to
Mhm.
prevent like the really damaging things that we've seen, for example, over the last 10 years. But when it comes to the Project Ontario event, when I was on stage, I mentioned to people, I'm like, Mike Harris would tell you, and he would tell the third parties during the Common Sense Revolution that every day in office they tell me I can't do something, and I try to do it anyway. And he would meet with these groups. He would meet with the kinds of people who were in that room with
That's right.
independent MPPs like you. He wouldn't have kicked you out, of course,
Right.
but and say, you're actually by holding us to account or by reminding us of our principles and our values, you are giving us the license to go out and do this work,
Mhm.
to actually not just take it from the left and have to abdicate on all these key issues. And the fact that that is now just met with hostility is
Right.
unique to me. And I know it's unique to you because you're sitting there going, this is my party, these were my people. I've
This was my family, right? This
Yeah,
this was my second family. 23 and a half years means 0, and one of the things that Toby Barrett instilled in me was that sense of loyalty, right?
yeah,
It was actually an interview question, it still is, I use it in my interview process now, is like, of all these words, what is the most important for working in a political environment? And the answer has to be loyalty, because if you're loyal, everything else falls into place. And
yeah,
so here, in 2022, we have the premier. Toby Barrett was the first MPP to support Doug Ford in his bid for leadership. The very first MPP to support the guy. And then in 2022, when Toby says, "Doug, this is a really bad idea. Like that, your champion is not a champion."
yeah,
I was like, I don't need to listen to you, Toby. Right? I don't need to listen to you. And the fact that they continue to come after me. Like, it does not feel like this campaign has ended. It did not end in February. I have been dragged into integrity commissioner reports through the municipality that I have had nothing to do with. His group of conservatives locally, and I use that conservative word loosely. I've never seen them before in the conservative political circles. So I suggest they're opportunists. They come at me every single day, like the campaign hasn't ended.
Yeah.
And I find this government, I find the Doug Ford government, and when I say that, I'm not talking about all of the cabinet ministers, because there are some wonderful, wonderful
Really wonderful, like
on that
bears
side of
repeating,
us.
and I very much feel the
Yes.
same. There's some terrific people in there.
Yeah, but then there are some people in the very inner circle who are extremely vindictive,
Yeah.
and that's the problem.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that play out, and I think we're
Yeah.
seeing versions of favoritism. If one were to check the news right now, there is
Mm,
perhaps that ethics send one of those guys
yeah.
in the direction of a lobby group or two. And so,
Mhm.
is there anything conservative about this government to you? Because like I talk to people about this all the time, and I can appreciate that they now win these apathy elections because the opposition, can't get its you know what together.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
look at any of the recent work of the Ford government, like can you point to anything that feels conservative to you?
Nothing comes to mind. I mean,
Yeah,
the premier has said some conservative things, and when he does say conservative things, I actually go out on social media and say, "Hey, like, being able to defend your property, being able to
same. Thumbs up.
defend your family on your own property, hands down, premier, that dude, I can support you every single day of the week on that."
Yeah,
But then a few days later, he says something like, "Oh, we're going to give, asylum seekers work permits," when our kids, my 20-year-old can't get a part-time job.
yeah.
It makes no sense. And so, like, it's just all over the place. Like, it's like developing policy on the back of a napkin.
Well, it strikes me every day as like an issues management exercise, but when you're just putting out fires that you start, where's the plan? Like
Yeah.
where's the you can't execute the ground game when it's, oh, the feds are pulling, the funding for
Mhm.
for the asylum shelters. And so it's like,
Yeah.
I got a bright idea. 800,000 new guys into the work market when it's record high youth unemployment. Your
Mhm.
your son can't find a job. I
It
I talk to young people every single day who are like, I'm on my 200th resume. I
Mhm.
don't see like a path to prosperity here. Like I got to move to Alberta.
Yep.
Heck, I might move to Mexico. Like this is,
Yep.
I thought this was going to be my forever home, and it's as if it doesn't want me. And so
That's right. Yeah, and especially, I think if you are a young male, right? I mean, we are just like, shove your hands in your pockets, put your head down, and don't
yeah,
ask any questions. And that is really tough from a mom's perspective. I have a 24-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and you know, I I just don't know what to tell my son. You want to be hopeful, you want to be optimistic, but when you don't see the things happening that should, that would set my son up for success, you're at a loss as to what to say to them, right? And that's
yeah,
where many of us as conservatives have become very disenfranchised when we see these things. And we're seeing them, in our small communities as well, which is really
yeah,
scary, because a lot of people, traditional conservatives, would say, well, no, it hasn't looked like that in Haldimand-Norfolk, or it hasn't looked like that in Brant. But now
yeah,
it's looking like that right across the province. And that's when people are like, wait a minute. And, I said to somebody after we were, off stage at Project Ontario, I said to someone, look, you know what? The premier could be in trouble. Like, I get so tired of hearing, the heckling from conservatives who are like, "Oh, well, we got the super majority," and like the boasting and the arrogance. And I'm like, you know
yeah.
what? That can fall apart just like that.
Yeah, and it's what are you proud of at this point? Like
Mhm,
I can appreciate a big electoral machine that runs on a lot of our money. I,
mhm,
I can appreciate that winning is important, but like very much in the at what cost phase, where if you ask the average person if their life was the classic election question, which is like, is your
yep,
life better now than it was? Pick a date. Like even like Matt Lau in the National Post this week
yeah,
wrote, like it's like Wynne and McGuinty were beating him on spending and crime, like
yes,
in keeping
yes,
that one on the rails. And
yeah.
so
Yeah,
congratulations, this has gone well for, all your guys and the inner circle. But when we looked around that room at our families and friends
mhm.
and fellow professionals, like I didn't see a whole lot of people who, felt
No,
positive about the direction of the province.
no, we wouldn't have been there had we felt positive. And, you know, with respect to law and order, crime and law and order,
Yeah.
I asked the tough question one day, to Mr. Kirshner, and I said, like, look, are you going to tell the feds that you will not, use OPP, you will not use police in this province to go door to door and ask people about gun ownership and what's in their safe. And he had the opportunity to very conservatively say, no, these are not the
Of
guns the
course
government is
not.
worried about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, 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 no. And I spent a lot of time, my liberal colleagues, to their credit, were more because I think Mitzi Hunter stood up that morning, and she was still in the House at the time, and she had spoken about there had been a shooting at a school in her riding, and so and I said, "That's do I ask this question today?" Because she's just and I went ahead with it, and then
Yeah.
I took my liberal friends, and they came to my desk, and I said, "Look, you know what? The gun being used at that school is not a law-abiding gun owner's gun." Like I gave them the education they were interested in. The conservatives, of course, know
Yeah.
that what
We
I'm
all know.
saying
Yeah.
is correct, but yet they won't do the right thing and just say, "No, you know what? We're not going to abet bad policy that makes for a sexy headline on the 6 o'clock news."
Well, they're awfully chummy with the federal liberals, right? And
So
so,
very, very disappointing what the
yeah.
premier did to Pierre.
Yeah, well, I mean, that could be a whole other episode.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have time today because I find it a little bit ironic, of course, that I think part of the criticism of yourself and part of the criticism of, for example, Project Ontario has been this like, you're supposed to keep it in the tent, guys. And it's like, where was
Mhm.
that during the federal election? Where was that? This daily planting of media stories, these daily liberal podcasts, these
But it
daily distraction cycles.
Yeah, and if we're supposed to keep it in the tent, then at least let us come in the tent.
You got kicked out of the
I
tent.
got kicked out of the stinking tent, and
Yeah.
I'm not allowed back in,
I'm a
and
I'm a Yahoo.
yeah, so when you start like, I don't understand this. So, Doug Ford's allowed to have just, like, go across the political spectrum
Yeah.
abet somebody like Trudeau and abet somebody like Carney, but yet he's not willing to listen to those of us with conservative thoughts. So we're not allowed to have dissenting views within the tent, and as soon
Yeah.
as you have a dissenting view within the tent, boom, you're gone, you're kicked right out. But yet he'll go outside the tent and solicit advice and policy from people outside the tent. It
Yeah.
makes 0 sense.
So it inexplicably falls to us to continue to be the opposition.
We
Bobby
will.
Ann, yeah, and we will. Bobby Ann, on I think it was your last election night, you said that courage is contagious,
Mhm.
and so those are important words to live by. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.